could pump this out real quick. Ross Scott. It's been ages since we've talked about him on the channel. I actually think the last time I talked about him was my second YouTube video ever on this channel, when I was talking about Pirate Software, because there was a bit of drama with Ross Scott and Pirate Software, if you remember. Pirate Software pretty much got the Stop Killing Games movement incorrect from a factual standpoint, and tons of people clown on him for it. And Ross Scott was like very, very charitable to him. I gotta say, I've always loved Ross. I've watched Ross ever since I was actually a kid. I'm not even kidding. Like, Ross had a series on YouTube called Freeman's Mind, which basically role plays as what Freeman is thinking. Gordon Freeman from the game Half-Life. It's a very creative series. It aired on Machinima. And yeah, it definitely was a good childhood for me. So Ross, thank you for contributing to my childhood. It's very weird to see him after all this time, but yeah. Stop Killing Games has a massive update, and I'll fill you guys in on what the Stop Killing Games movement is. It's essentially something that Ross has been working on throughout 2025 to try to get it legislated that, like, basically at any point, video games can end the service or their servers when you purchase a game. So it's kind of shitty because a lot of times in video games, when you're playing like a multiplayer based game, when the servers just end, it's like, oh, well, shit, I spent all this money on this game. I can't even at the very least maybe set up like a LAN server or like a private server that me and my friends can hop onto and just like fuck around on the game. Like, I can't even do that much. It's kind of shitty, you know? So I think the idea behind this game is legally make it so that games can still be in its playable state even after all the years that you've purchased it, essentially. That's like the general idea of it. So, yeah, apparently there's a massive update for it. I'm very curious about it.
Hello! I have not had many updates on the Stop Killing Games campaign in a while, but this is not for a lack of things to talk about. If you recall in the wrap-up video, I said I don't like doing the news on it now unless there's more of a purpose to it.
That's generally like a good boundary to set. I mean, if there's like very small updates, I suppose you could do it in like the form of short form content maybe, because like that's kind of like the meta nowadays, but I don't know.
See, ever since we got the signatures on the European Citizens Initiative, I've been more or less following orders from the political insiders who have been assisting us. And it's become much less about getting internet attention and far more about political maneuvering and attention of regulators, that sort of thing. I've been sitting on lots of information because that's what they advised. And now I'm being advised to tell everyone what's happening, or most of it. So on that note, I have lots of updates. Some of it is maybe bad news, but most of it is good news. In fact, let me start off by saying I think we're gonna win this. Namely, the problem of publishers destroying video games that you've already paid for.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a very shitty thing. I mean, like, I get it from, like, maybe I don't know if I want to say a business standpoint. Well, it's kind of a business standpoint. It's a little complicated, but, like, maybe from, like, a developer standpoint, where, like, there's no point to keep your servers running if there's hardly any people playing them. I can sort of understand it, but at the same time, there should be, like, a setup where you can, at the very least, set up the game so that way you can, like, play on a private server with friends. I think that's, like, more than reasonable to ask for.
Can't say is when or which method will happen first. We have so many avenues in play, and the more I learn, the more I see this could become a quite convoluted path. But the reason I
mean, it was already a convoluted path, given that this is now went into a petition, and it's kind of going into one of the parliaments. I think it was the UK Parliament. It could be wrong. I don't know. It's been a little bit since we've covered this, so I guess I'll get back into the groove of it as we get through this video.
So much faith in us getting a win is that the law is on our side on this. We could lose 5 paths we're pursuing and still get a win. Let's start with the maybe bad news first. The meeting with the EU Commission is coming up very soon, and we actually have no idea what to expect. Now, what I'm hoping happens is once we've explained what's going on in the games industry and how the practice of game destruction is largely violating EU law, the Commission will realize there's a problem and bring a proposal to EU Parliament. or at the very least clarify existing law on the issue. However, we've had some events that could suggest that won't be what will happen. One of the biggest is this will actually not be our first meeting with the Commission. Back in October...
I mean, yeah, like I said, it's a whole process. Obviously, you can't just get it done in like a month and be like, oh, the government likes it, yay. And obviously, there's like a whole process to it, so...
Members of the initiative were invited to discuss the possibility of getting our issue added to the Digital Fairness Act. Now, I wasn't there, so I'm getting this secondhand, but from what I've been told, it wasn't great. I'm told it felt like the commission had been prompted with lines from the industry. They apparently kept emphasizing how video games are a living, breathing thing because of constant updates.
I mean, that's kind of just the name of the game, literally the name of the game for a lot of multiplayer games, is that you have to keep constantly doing updates to them. I mean, like, even with, like, an example, Killing Floor 3. Like, Killing Floor 3 had, like, a bit of a player base in the beginning, but, like, I don't think that many players are really on it right now. Like, the player base is not nearly as much as, say, something like, I don't know, fucking, like, Apex or something. I don't even know if Apex's player base is as high as it used to be. I'm pretty sure the Apex player base has, like, gone down over the years. Not that there isn't a player base. Like, people still grind the shit out of that game, but still. There's a lot of games that still get, like, tons and tons of updates. That's just kind of, like, the way it is. And inevitably, these servers are not going to be around forever. Or, I mean, so we thought. I guess until this gets passed.
Oh, yeah, that totally doesn't sound like an expression the industry came up with. Though I admit, that description pairs well with the Stop Killing Games movement.
I mean, you're not wrong there.
I'm pleased with how the organizers responded to this, explaining that your phone receives lots of updates also, but if software support ends, you still get to keep your phone. They were also concerned about this preventing new games from being made, specifically teenagers in their bedrooms creating small games. Now, my first thought was, oh yeah, all those teen solo developers creating live service games.
I mean, I suppose it's not entirely impossible. I mean, you look at a game like Balatro, and that was done by some random guy in Canada who just had a bunch of spare time, and like he put it on Steam. He got like some guy on Fiverr to compose the soundtrack for him. He didn't think that the game would do well at all, and it wound up selling. It became a massive hit. It even won a couple of awards at the 2024 Game Awards. It was actually insane how much Balatro really took off. We were supposed to get an update for it last year, but it got delayed, and now we don't know when that update is going to be. Just any number of things could happen. It's just basically we're kind of at a point now where the update is going to be done when it's done, essentially. So yeah, I mean, like, any developer at any point can take off, and that goes for, like, any creative art. Wow, who would have guessed, right?
You may as well be worried about discouraging teen lawyers from opening up law firms out of their bedrooms. I mean, the vast majority of developers, let alone teens, are not making live service games. Especially the kinds that create the most problems in the industry.
Well, they're not going to be making anything on the same tier as, like, I don't know, Fortnite or Call of Duty, because those have, like, whole teams behind them. There's only so much that one person can do and can get done. There is a lot that they can get done, but there's only so much they can get done.
Industry. But then it hit me. Wait a minute. I actually can think of a teen who made a live service game. Nelson Sexton made the game Unturned at 16 years old.
Oh, wait, that's crazy. I remember I played Unturned a while ago. I didn't know he made this when he was 16. That's impressive. Wow, Unturned is a very fun game.
It's intended primarily for online play and receives frequent updates. There are many who would define that as a live service game. Oh, but what's this? It already had private server support? So he was never part of the problem in the first place. So this exact and very rare scenario that the commission is concerned about has already happened. And if our initiative had existed, it wouldn't have interfered with him in any way. Everything would have still been fine. And it wasn't small either. It's had 24 million players.
Yeah, no, Unturned was very big back in 2014. I didn't play it, like, I wouldn't say I dumped an intense amount of hours into it, But it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It's if you like a good survival game, you can also play by yourself, I'm pretty sure as well. But if you like a good kind of campy survival-esque game that kind of has like the graphics of Minecraft sort of, Unturned is for you. It's cool. I enjoyed it.
So a 16-year-old was able to figure out how to do this in 2014, but major publishers worth billions just keep struggling with this concept. I'm having a flashback here.
It's impossible.
Nelson Sexton.
I was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Though a developer does not have to be Iron Man to not destroy their game. On the contrary, the vast majority of them don't do this. A publisher has to go out of their way and do lots of extra work to design a game to stop working when support ends. It's a very deliberate decision. Also in the meeting was our old favorite talking point. The commission was concerned that we were asking for endless support from publishers. It was explained, no, we're not. Publishers can end support anytime they want. We're asking that they don't also destroy what they've already sold to the customer when they do so. I don't blame the commission for needing clarity on that point. The industry keeps trying to push this mischaracterization of us over and over and over. Anyway, there were mixed opinions on the meeting, but I'm told the overall vibe was that it felt like the commission was trying to find reasons to not include our initiative.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, Ross did this initiative from the ground up. And this can be a real thing. I don't know. This is just me speculating. But you'll have it where a lot of bureaucracies don't want to do any more work than they have to. And I know that might sound a little bit, like, counterintuitive at first. But, like, maybe it's, like, a statistic thing. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the show called The Wire. This was, like, a very real thing where the Baltimore Police Department, their stats were very good as is in terms of their crime rate, and they didn't want to risk potentially lowering or raising their average. So a lot of times they would just choose to not take crime cases, or at least not take any more than they had to, because they wanted to keep their numbers good with the bureaucracy. It was a very fucked up system. And again, The Wire tells like a very good story. I don't know if a similar concept is happening with Parliament necessarily, where I guess maybe they have like a system in place where they also keep that, maybe for like a different set of reasons. I don't know. This is just me like speculating, because I don't understand why they would do everything in their power to not like take this into their hands. I don't know.
Which is unfortunate, since I'm told by EU staff that we set a record in the number of comments received by the public on a pending EU act for trying to be included in the Digital Fairness Act. Additionally, if you look at the purpose of the Digital Fairness Act, look at what it says it's trying to address. According to the European Commission, the effectiveness of EU consumer protection is undermined by insufficient enforcement, legal uncertainty, increasing risk of regulatory fragmentation across member states' national approaches, and the lack of incentives for businesses to aim for the highest standard of protection. That perfectly describes our problems with how the law is currently functioning in regards to publishers destroying games. And part of the act is even focused on video games. So yeah, I'm missing how our issue is a poor fit for the Digital Fairness Act. But it wasn't just that. The meeting kind of bled over into the Citizens Initiative also. But the real closer came at the end, where the commission told us point blank they are pursuing a deregulatory agenda. And yes, the initiative is asking for regulation. So if the commission has already decided it wants to deregulate, I could see where that might be a problem. Now, ironically, after the meeting was over, I'm told some legal experts involved came up to the organizers and said to please pursue this issue because it's worthwhile, and it is a fight that needs to be fought. See, stuff like this is exactly why I have no idea which way the commission is going to go on this.
I mean, it's kind of a W because, like, I don't know. I think part of it is the fact that Ross can really sell his point. Like, in his first video with the Stop Killing Games movement, he was kind of like, I don't know, I could see some people going like, yeah, you know, I don't know, I'm not really feeling it. This guy just seems like he's very passionate about video games, but who knows if this is going to go anywhere. But by the end of the video, I could see a lot of people being like, wow, he actually really sold me, and he communicated his point very well. And it's like, it is kind of fucked up that video games can just stop their service at any point, and you could just buy the game and be like, well, what the fuck? Like, I paid for the game. A big part of the experience is the multiplayer experience, and if the servers are shut down, what's the point? You know, like I said, that's why I think it would be great if these gaming places or whatever, or these games could have like a system where you could do the dedicated server thing like Unturned had. That's probably the best thing. And you could make it so you could set it up with like friends, or like have like a LAN party or something, you know? Or maybe like a private server that you and your friends could do. I don't know. I think that'd be cool.
More on that point, this next part gets weird. On July 10th of last year, back when we were still collecting signatures for the initiative, the EU Commission released a statement titled Ready Player EU. It then took it down the next day so fast there wasn't even time for Wayback Machine to archive it. I never even got a chance to read this article. However, a reporter for news outlet Euractiv did, and you can see the headline for yourself. Commission preparing token gesture for angry gamers and game developers. The EU Commission is preparing a non-binding communication on the video game sector, likely in response to an ongoing citizens' initiative calling for rules to stop killing games. What's more, in the article it says a spokesperson blamed a technical glitch, but said full publication is planned for 2026. Huh. I'm honestly not sure what to make of this, and the political insiders helping us aren't either. Or rather, they're divided. Some say that the Euractiv article misread it, and this means nothing. Others are saying, no, that article is reading between the lines, and the EU Commission has already decided to make a non-binding statement on this issue, probably encouraging the industry to self-regulate. Well, I feel like this goes without saying, but in case it doesn't, self-regulation from the industry is not a good solution for two big reasons.
Well, yeah, because they can take it and then basically do whatever the fuck they want with it, and they can spin it in like any... It's hard to explain, but a lot of games or game developers can take advantage of that sort of thing.
Probably more...
Or I shouldn't say game developers, more like publishers, like Activision, we'll say.
More, but I can think of two. First, the practice of publishers deliberately destroying games with no expiration date that customers have already paid for has been going on for at least 13 years. Battleforge is a notable example of one of the earlier ones from 2013. So the industry has already had over a decade to self-regulate, and that's led to the situation becoming so bad, that's what led to over 1 million people petitioning the EU Commission about it. And they're still going. Hell, at the time of this video, Anthem got permanently disabled by Electronic Arts just last month.
Yeah, I mean, that's really unfortunate. I mean, like, I know that Anthem had, like, a bit of a rocky launch at first. I feel like that rocky launch can turn a lot of people off. And I would argue the launch of your game is probably more important than the marketing, to be honest with you. Because the launch of... I mean, the marketing can lead up to the launch of the game and how well it does, but the launch is, like, probably the most important part. If people really enjoy the launch of the game, then your game is going to last, and if people have the impression that the launch of the game sucks, then they're not going to be turned on by it again. Thankfully, Cyberpunk is kind of a rare instance where the launch of Cyberpunk was absolutely terrible. So many people were hating on it, and they were complaining about how many bugs it has. But now, people love Cyberpunk. Like, people are going back to Cyberpunk, and they're like, holy shit, this game is good. I enjoyed Cyberpunk before people were going back to it, and, like, being like, oh, wow, this game's actually good. So, yeah, I mean, like, I guess anything could happen. But, like, again, they're shutting down the servers of Anthem when they probably shouldn't. Because, like, again, they need, like, their own dedicated servers or whatever. But, again, EA and Activision are kind of in the same ballpark in the sense that they, like, shut down their servers or they, like, don't do anything with their servers and they try to move on to the next project and hope that that makes a fuck ton of money. Because at the end of the day, these publishers are more interested in the cash than the product itself, I think.
It sold 5 million...
Not that you shouldn't be interested in cash, of course, but you get what I mean. Some of these businesses are very, like, greedy and that can consume them.
Copies, and now no one can run it again, and people are not getting refunds. This is what industry self-regulation looks like. We're living it. So we've already tried it this way for over a decade, and it's getting worse. That's why we want law enforcement. Believe me, I was hoping the industry would solve this themselves. I don't want to be doing this. Second, the industry has built a history showing it's terrible at regulating itself on this issue. I refer back to my earlier video where volunteers did a study examining as many games as they could find requiring a connection to the publisher. Well, we've since updated those results on a wiki anyone can check out. Out of over 600 games with this design that the industry has ended support on, the publisher let the customer keep their purchase about 4 to 6% of the time, depending on how you measure it, due to some games only being partially destroyed.
I think those are very alarming numbers. The fact that it's even at those numbers to begin with really goes to show that, like, all these developers put all this time in the game to make it functional for you guys to play it and to enjoy. And, like, who knows, maybe in years' time, in like a decade time, or even over a decade or whatever, people may want to go back to these games and be like, yeah, like, I want to play it. Nowadays, in order to enjoy even some of these games, like in the early 2000s, you have to, like, emulate some of them, especially if they were on, like, GameCube or whatever. But then you have, like, fucking this, where it's, like, hundreds of thousands of games just, like, or sorry, not hundreds of thousands, just hundreds of games just are completely wasted by the fact that they need an online connection to play. And, like, all that dev time just goes down the fucking drain. So I feel like it's kind of a fuck you to the developers, if anything, because they put all this work into it, and now some of these games may never even see the light of day ever again.
But let's take the most generous interpretation and say it's 6.5%. That's terrible under any standard. If you scored 6.5% on a test, that would be a failure. Self-regulation is not working. So I don't know what to make of this leak by the EU Commission. But if that Euractiv article is true, then I admit that caught us off guard. Because that means the decision was already made before we even got a chance to present our evidence. We were still collecting signatures. I mean, if you look at the European Citizens Initiative process, that's like taking the absolute final step of the process and moving it up to step 3 here. Well, if that's what's happened and the decision's already been made, wouldn't that make the other steps pointless? It kind of reminds me of an old Onion video about the election results accidentally being leaked before the election. Oops.
Oops.
Just to be clear,
I guess Donald Trump, that would happen to Donald Trump more than anywhere, considering he is a Russian asset and the Russians wanted to get him elected. Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't know. I'm saying having this leak during the height of our signature gathering was weird, and that Euractiv article only increased our concerns about whatever the EU Commission has planned. Now, I'm hoping this is all just us worrying about nothing, but I've seen this issue get ignored again and again long before the Commission ever heard of it. So I'm kind of biased to expect the worst here. I'm just showing everyone why we have concerns the meeting might not go well. So that's the maybe bad news. There's a lot of good news. Because we don't know what kind of answer we're going to get from the Commission, we're trying not to take any chances. Thanks to volunteer help, we've been making serious inroads in EU Parliament, and at this stage, I've been told we have majority support, and our issue will be brought before Parliament, and it's in a good position to get passed. Now, EU policymaking is quite complex, so there are more steps beyond that, but that's good news. Next, the movement as a whole will be launching an official NGO on the issue of game destruction. Now, if you're like me, you may have some skepticism on how much this can do, but there are definite advantages. The first is this will allow us to do long-term counter-lobbying on this issue. I mean, we're hoping to get the Citizens Initiative passed or added to the Digital Fairness Act, but if those fail, there's still the possibility of being added to the Digital Content Directive revision.
You can really tell that Ross is, like, very passionate about this, and, like, he's done so much research on the law to make sure that there's every... You know, he really thought of everything. Like, he's trying his hardest. Like, he's having meetings with commissioners of the EU. He's having, meetings with, like, Parliament and stuff. He's going to have even more. And he's actually, like, it seems like Stop Killing Games, and it seems like a lot of them are actually, like, on board with this overall. So I mean, some of them are trying to not deal with it or whatever, and I had my theories as to why that is. And again, because I don't understand, like, who would think that this is a bad thing. I feel like overall, this is, like, objectively just a good thing for gaming. And, like, a good thing from, like, a marketing standpoint.
We're trying to find a way in any way we can. This will also signal that we're not just going away on this issue. I mean, I might. I've been at this for over a decade, but the movement isn't. If there's a lobbyist showing up again and again at the EU Commission, that might influence things. This will also allow for more watchdog action. Like if you recall, I helped organize a multilingual site with easy-to-follow instructions for reporting on the crew to consumer protection agencies. Well, maybe the NGO could set something like that up for every big shutdown where the game is destroyed in the future. There are lots of smaller angles too that can increase the pressure. Like, I would bet it starts to get a lot easier to get refunds on games that get destroyed in many countries, even before all the legal matters are settled.
Yeah, that is going to be massive for, like, publishers. I mean, honestly, big rest in peace to Activision if this law ever gets passed. Because when you really think about it, like, a lot of the servers in Call... I mean, I guess if Activision hires some of the best lawyers that they can... They could make an argument that technically some of the Call of Duty servers, mainly on their older games that not a lot of people play on anymore, a lot of those servers are still technically active, but just because they're technically active doesn't mean they're safe to play on. I mean, they're unregulated. Tons of hackers are rampant in, like, the live servers of them. That's why when you see a lot of people playing on, like, older Call of Duty games in multiplayer, they use, like, plutonium just for the safety, just so they don't get, like, doxxed or they don't get hacked or whatever, or they don't get, like, any viruses. Some of them can actually give you malware. Like, I remember on Infinite Warfare, like, some of those servers, like, actually, I think when I heard a story where somebody was trying to play Infinite Warfare on multiplayer, and they got, like, malware on their PC. Like, I think after they played, like, one game, they noticed that their mouse cursor was moving on its own without them even touching the mouse, and it was, like, very fucked up. Like, I don't know. It's definitely, like, they need to do something about that. And I think it really creates a conversation of, at what point does it become false advertising when you really think about it?
Now, there's a lot of people involved now, so I'm not trying to dismiss anyone, but you can thank Moritz Katzner and his team for spearheading the NGO and helping us with so much influence in Parliament. Since we got the signatures, in my opinion, he's been doing as much for the movement in the political sphere as I did on the issue on everything prior to that, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. That could be why he tends...
God, this guy, I fucking love Ross so much. He's just, like, he's so passionate about this whole thing. He's very, like, he's a very genuine guy, and he seems real. He seems like someone who's very passionate about video games. And, like, I don't know, like, Ross just has, like, very contagious, like, positive energy every time I listen to him talk. Like, he is honestly the GOAT. Like, genuinely. Like, he's a... I don't know, man. This guy, like, how could you hate Ross?
to not sleep. I've told him he should sleep, but whatever. Edgar Allan Poe didn't like sleep either. So we're going to have a...
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe's a bit of a weird guy. That's all I'm gonna say.
European NGO. They'll have more details later. But wait, there's more. Did I say NGO? I meant NGOs. There's a second one launching also. Yes, there is going to be a second Stop Killing Games NGO, except in the United States. Political activists in the US were inspired by what we're doing and have secured some real funding. And because he's such a workhorse, Moritz is helping them by getting the process started to pass legislation in multiple states.
I mean, in states, that's good. To be honest, I'm surprised that, like, some of the states in the U.S. are even doing anything at all. Like, considering the fact that we are in the hellhole that is this current administration, like, Trump would not give a singular fuck about this movement at all. He would probably make some backhanded comment and be like, fuck it, get off your ass, stop playing video games or something like that, or whatever. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. He wouldn't give a shit about this. Like, I did a terrible Trump impression, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, this is terrible. But, like, the fact that, like, individual states are doing something about this is actually pretty good. I imagine... I'm curious to know what states those are. Maybe Ross will go into it.
He's even flown out to D.C. to get the ball rolling.
Ooh, that's huge. Going to D.C. I gotta go to D.C. sometime soon.
It's underway.
Probably not anytime soon, though, because of this administration, but maybe in a couple of years when Trump is no longer the president, I would like to hope.
He's setting it up so that the U.S. members will take over. I admit, I did not see that coming. That we're having law drafted on this in the USA before the EU. Now, before people get too excited, I've never hidden the fact that I'm very skeptical of our odds of changing this in the US.
Yeah, especially now, like I said, with like Trump being in office, there's no fight. Like, I would say Trump decreases our odds of passing this even further. Even if we had like Biden in office, it would still be a long shot because like a lot of these politicians are much older guys that don't really care about the passion of video games, and they're not going to be as like, I guess, educated on it.
Because unlike the...
But if we can get someone like Zoran Mamdani to see this movement, I don't know. Maybe if I don't know, if I ever saw Zoran Mamdani, I would actually ask him in person about the Stop Killing Games movement, and I think maybe that could be huge. Bro, that'd be big. If somebody could contact Zoran Mamdani in New York, and like they could, like Mamdani could get educated on the Stop Killing Games movement. I genuinely think Mamdani would be the type of person to get on board if he like educates himself on like this topic and what it's about. I genuinely think that would be like a really cool thing. Obviously, he's a busy guy, but I think it would be something to add to the table.
The legal foundation isn't there. So the only way to fix this is through new law. But I would love to have my cynicism proven wrong. At the very least, it won't hurt anything and can raise more attention on solving the problem either there or elsewhere. Actually, what I kind of hope this does is maybe give the industry some pause. Like, should we be spending millions on fighting this issue when we could be spending thousands, if that, just fixing the problem so our customers stop lobbying against us? Like, I get why the industry fights so hard against regulating predatory monetization. If the video game industry can't push microtransactions on kids and gambling addicts easily, that could literally cost them billions. So while I'm not a fan of...
Yeah, but I mean, like, a lot of countries in EU have already, like, added regulations on that anyways. Like, any sort of loot box game in the country of Belgium is just completely banned. Like, CSGO, or CS2, rather, you can't play that at all in Belgium, or at least not legally you can't.
That... I at least understand why they spend a lot fighting that. But our issue, having bare bones end-of-life plans, that's peanuts. They are absolutely spending more money on lobbyists to fight this than it would take to fix their development process, and then the cost would be almost nothing afterwards. And as a bonus, then their customers would like them more. Now, between the two NGOs, I'm told they also plan to make this a global movement. I don't have any details yet, but maybe they could follow up on our consumer action in Australia. Or maybe they could get lawsuits back on the table in Brazil like we attempted earlier. I don't even know everything they have planned, but it feels like this is coming together to apply pressure on this from all sides. But back to the EU. I said earlier I think we're going to win this. That's because there are two basic ways we can win. The first and the best option is introducing new law that specifically addresses the problem, like we've been doing. Doing it this way can make the transition as easy as possible, take industry concerns into account, and it's faster. But let's say we lose on all fronts on that. Say the EU Commission doesn't want new regulation, getting support in Parliament isn't enough, we can't push the Citizens Initiative forward, we can't get in the Digital Fairness Act, and we can't make that into the Digital Content Directive. If all that happens, the new law is out, which means our only option left is enforcement of existing law. See, the thing that gets forgotten...
So, what is the enforcement in existing law for this specifically? Does that... I don't know if Ross has gone into that part specifically, but, like, can't they do something? I mean, they did something similar with, like, loot boxes. I know Belgium was one of the countries. I don't know any other countries that they banned loot boxes on, but, like, there's gotta be, like, some other, like, in existing laws that they can, like, reinforce some of this on. I don't know.
when talking about.
I wonder if like video games going forward are gonna like start either bringing back dedicated servers or implementing ways that the game is still going to be playable in preparation for this movement, because the Stop Killing Games movement has gotten way bigger than Ross, I guess, has ever even imagined. So I would like to see something like that. I mean, a ton of people would. I'm just trying to think, like, who could possibly be against this? The only people are, like, government that don't want to do any work, but that's about it. And I guess maybe the publishers themselves. The publishers would be really pissed off about it, too, because they won't be able to make as much money.
The initiative is that it's very likely large portions of the video game industry have already been breaking the law when destroying customer copies of video games for a long time. There's just been no enforcement on it. My theory on what happened is in the United States, the law that allows companies to do this was basically settled back in the 90s. So what I think happened is the rest of the industry kind of copied what the USA was doing, even though in the European Union, the laws that were supposed to protect customers against practices like this never actually went away. I've mentioned before how earlier we got help from members of parliament to ask the EU Commission questions on how exactly these types of games are governed. And we referred specifically to terms like can be terminated at any time for any reason in user license agreements. Well, the Commission itself said that these may be a violation, but need to be handled on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that makes sense, because, like, if it's on a case-by-case basis, games can terminate their servers for any number of reasons. The most common reason, obviously, being that there's just not enough players and not enough people buying it. So if there's not enough people playing on it or buying things within this game, then there's no point in paying to keep the servers running. That's the most common reason. I'm trying to think of, like, other reasons in-game for, like, the servers just completely shutting down. I guess maybe just, like, old infrastructure. Like, there could still be tons of people playing the game, but the servers are so old. Like, let's say maybe it's, like, a 2001 or 2003 game. The servers are so incredibly old that they're just not even worth supporting anymore. That could be another thing. But then you have, like, Half-Life, which has its own, like, dedicated server. Like, that's a game that I'm just using as an example. Even to this day, you can set up your own dedicated server on Half-Life, and if you want to get, like, a couple of friends, you'd be able to play just fine. So I'm not really sure any other reason, because, like, again, the most common reason being that, like, there's just not enough support on said servers or not enough people playing on them.
Well, if they stick to that, that's unfortunate, because that's going to create more chaos for everyone, really. First, this clause here is not a few isolated cases. I want to say 98% of all games sold that require a connection to the publisher have a clause like this. It might even be 100%, I don't know, but it's almost all of them. Look at any major game where you need to connect to the publisher, and it's going to have some variant of this term. So handling this case by case, country by country, is going to flood the courts doing it this way, with different penalties and interpretations for each.
Yeah, so it's not going to be the best solution for this. I mean, I suppose it's like a start, maybe, but like it's just not going to be good enough for what the Stop Killing Games movement is trying to do.
But I guess that's something the NGO could help with. The situation on this issue is already in chaos now. This would just send it all into overdrive. At this point in time, no country in the EU has a clear answer on how to handle the situation of a publisher selling you a game, giving you no time frame for how long it lasts, then deliberately disabling it at a later date. Do you know how I know this? Because we already tried to find out. Back in 2024, we had people from countries all around the EU reporting to consumer agencies on the company Ubisoft disabling the game The Crew. Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Croatia, we had volunteers in the majority of EU countries trying to get an answer on this. Now, the EU recommends doing this through the European Consumer Centers Network. So that's what we did. Or we tried to. The results were chaos. Most agencies had no idea what we should do. A representative from Germany even said that there is no clear legal regulation on this. In several cases, we had contradictory answers from the same country. So if you called in the morning, they might tell you you were entitled to a refund. If you called in the afternoon, they might say that there's nothing they can do. you would have more consistency asking a Magic 8 Ball. Now, we eventually managed to bypass the ECC network since that went nowhere, and got thousands of complaints sent to the consumer protection agencies in France and Germany. But that was almost 2 years ago, and they're still trying to figure this out. At the time of this video, no country in the EU knows how to handle this situation. And as a reminder, this problem has been going on for at least 13 years. Well, really the practice began around 2004, but the negligence side started around 2013 at the latest. I mentioned those questions to the EU Commission earlier. Those were asked because neither members of European Parliament that we talked to, nor their staff knew the answers to how this practice is regulated. Even though the video game industry is worth hundreds of billions, this rather fundamental issue for customers has managed to slip through the cracks of governments all around the EU. Again, the best way to solve this situation would be to have a clear regulation addressing the problem. But if we can't get that, we have to do it the messy way, through the consumer agencies one by one trying to figure this out, and probably through the courts.
Yeah, but I think an interesting point to bring up about doing it one by one is the fact that you can sometimes one country is enough to get every single game to change its system entirely. And I'll give an example. Call of Duty was doing the loot box system since, I don't know, I think they first introduced it in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare with the supply drop system. And then supply drops was a mechanic that got brought over to Call of Duty Black Ops 3. And then I believe Infinite Warfare. I think they had something similar in World War II, and then they had it in Black Ops 4. Well, Black Ops 4 is kind of tricky because, at first they didn't have the loot box system. Black Ops 4 had the Battle Pass system, which they took inspiration from Fortnite. A lot of gaming systems, or games, were using the Battle Pass system because Fortnite was the first to introduce it. And it was so successful that they tried it, and inevitably Black Ops 4 then brought back loot boxes with reserves or whatever. Now, one other thing to just keep in mind is, I would say the moment Belgium and a few other countries were banning loot boxes, sometimes all it takes is a few countries to ban a certain system for then a video game to go, oh wow, a lot of players do play in those, and other countries might ban loot boxes as well. We should probably change our system to make it so that we don't have loot boxes so we can prepare for this law. So again, sometimes all it takes is just a few countries to pass certain laws to make games act. That can be more than enough. So maybe from that angle, maybe Ross can operate. That might still be good enough depending on case by case, even though case by case is still a little bit messier than he would have intended.
Now, why is this worse? Well, a few reasons, both for consumers and the industry. First, this is way more bureaucratic overhead. Having dozens of governments across every country trying to interpret what the law says instead of having clear rules from the EU. Case by case is going to be very messy for a practice that's being done across the whole industry. Second, this method is way, way slower. It's already taking years for consumer agencies to process one case. I suspect they'll find Ubisoft guilty of something, especially the DGCCRF, then that may lead to a court case against them, then that will go through appeals, then maybe after that it goes...
And that's just years and years of time of settlements and lawyers and it being a case, and that could take God knows how long. So... It's way too slow either way. It's fucked, really, to get something like this passed. Again, you can really see just how stressful Ross was throughout 2025 trying to get this movement off the ground. And he really, I would say, given this video, he's obviously been very successful with it, but it's just very, it's just not perfect, unfortunately. And I think ultimately this Stop Killing Games movement is not going to be... It's not going to end up where he wants it to be 100%, but hopefully he'll get it to a point where something will happen. It'll get people talking, it'll get laws passed, it'll get governments talking. Something's been going up. I mean, we've already been spreading awareness to it. I feel like a lot of us have done our part. Again, very passionate movement, and honestly, a very good thing overall. I gotta give, props to Ross. Hopefully, and again, like I said, if individual states are already looking into this in the U.S., I think we could get Sauron Mamdani on board. I don't know, man. Maybe something could happen. I know Mamdani alone can't do something about it, but I think he can maybe spread word to like the legislation of New York or something. I don't know, man. So something could happen. You never know.
To the European High Court of Justice. This path moves at a glacial speed. Third, this way is going to be harsher on the industry. See, the Citizens Initiative talks about customer copies being reasonably playable, giving some leeway for how many features need to be intact. The courts could be far less lenient. Also on that note, the Citizens Initiative is...
Well, when they also say lenient to play, that doesn't necessarily... It doesn't specifically talk about the multi-player servers at all. Like, it could just be like, you know, oh, all the functions in the game work, all the mechanics in the game technically work, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, they could run with all sorts of technicalities with that.
Not retroactive. It can't be under EU law. But courts finding companies guilty of violating law that's already on the books can be enforced as far back as countries want to. So this path has way more penalties for the industry and is way more disruptive. But if the possibility of new regulation is truly off the table, then this is all we have left. But don't take my word for it. Law professor Alberto Hidalgo Cerezo, PhD of the University of San Pablo, who has the Madrid Lawyers Bar Award in International and European Union Law from 2019, has been working on a 500-page legal study on this issue.
Wow. That is huge. That's cool.
Alberto actually did his PhD
This movement really has gone super far. Holy shit, dude.
thesis on this subject. Was awarded...
Wait, what was that? Hold on. I have to listen to that again.
Has been working on a 500-page legal study on this issue. Alberto actually did his PhD thesis on this subject.
That... I would take that as a compliment. Somebody doing their PhD study on a movement that you started, that's I don't know, man. Like, Ross is, like, kind of, like, lightly flexing and also humbling himself a bit. Like, that's a flex. That somebody wrote a PhD thesis on your movement. That's crazy. I think that's a compliment. That's cool.
Was awarded summa cum laude, an extraordinary doctorate award in 2020, with it being published in the #1 law editorial in Spain, Aranzadi, in the collection Great Treaties. The study is still forthcoming, but I talked to him about the legality of the practice of publishers selling a copy of a game with no time frame, then later deliberately disabling the customer's copy permanently and offering no refunds. According to him, that is unlawful and constitutes at least a breach of objective conformity, according to Directive 2019-770. In all honesty, he brought up so many points on why this is unlawful, I got a little lost. But he emphasized that the buying and selling of a contract is a transfer of property, both in the physical and the digital world. And you can't simply say you'll end the contract at any time without permission or cause. He had some good legal quotes pertaining to that, such as the validity and enforcement of contracts cannot be left to the discretion of one of the contracting parties. Also, no one may be deprived of their property except by competent authority and for justifiable reasons of public utility, always subject to the corresponding compensation. He also mentioned that this may circumvent Articles 17 and 38 of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, and that this falls under Articles 4.2.f, 12, 114.3, and 169 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. And that's on top of Directives 9313 EEC and 2019-770 that the EU Commission mentioned. He thinks that EU consumer law is among the best in the world, and I'm inclined to agree, so we came to the right place to get this problem examined. Now, I'm not doing him justice. For those interested in this part, we plan to have him appear in a video later on, going into detail on this study, so you can hear about it directly from him. More news, that's the EU itself, but in Poland, we've been in touch with the Polish government and they've been very supportive along with the major opposition party in Poland. So there's support across party lines on this issue there. I mentioned the ongoing consumer action in Germany and France, though in France especially, All news I've received suggests we're going to get as fair a hearing as possible on this issue by the DGCCRF. We can't ask for more than that.
Honestly, Ross is doing God's work trying to get this passed. I could see most people trying to get this passed, and, like, I don't know, they wouldn't even make it past, like, the first month of, like, working through all the legal jargon. Ross has taken the time to educate himself on the EU law. He's taken his time to learn what these people have to say, going to these meetings, trying to bring these issues to all these different governments, and, like, the movement and, like, spreading awareness about it, getting the signatures for the petition and everything. Like, Ross has gone above and beyond to make sure that this movement can get to its full potential. And I gotta give, like, massive props. Like, that takes a lot of effort. And he's been insanely passionate about this. So I honestly have nothing but good things to say. Like, this is, like, an insanely... I just wish for the best. If there's, like, anything that we, as people watching his video, can do about... I mean, like, the best thing we could do was sign the petition. But if there's anything else we can do, like, I genuinely feel like... hopefully there's, like, more things we as people can do. I guess by just continue to spread awareness about it is really what we can do. Is just being like, hey, you know, this Stop Killing Games movement is a thing. If some individual governments in America are willing to look into this, hopefully maybe there's something we can do here in New York where I live. That would be huge.
And hey, maybe that NGO can help activate more countries on this. We'll see. We're building momentum. When it comes to the issue of game destruction, all signs point to the video game industry breaking the law on a massive scale in Europe. There just hasn't been any enforcement on it. I think we'll change that, eventually. Again, we'd prefer to just work out a sensible new law to make this as easy as possible on everyone. That's why we use the terminology reasonably playable in the initiative. Similar to the Right to Repair Directive, talking about a reasonable price or a reasonable time. We want games to be reasonably playable. Now that has some interpretation, but deliberately disabling every customer copy of a game is not reasonably playable. But what that phrase means is we're leaving maximum flexibility to the industry for how they achieve this. And are
I do wonder, though, if, like, in a court of law setting, they can look at that. Again, like, because I brought this up earlier in the video. I just wonder, in, like, a court of law setting, if game developers or lawyers that are running defense for the game publishers can look at that and interpret that in any other way and argue that technically, like, again, in the case of Call of Duty, technically the servers are still playable. It would be more of like a lie by omission, really, because there's a lot of hackers and there's a lot of, like, malware in a lot of these, like, older Call of Duty servers. So, I mean, I guess technically that's not reasonably playable, but I wonder if there's, like, a loophole that they could be successful with. Would be kind of stinky, but that's my biggest concern.
Open to any solution that solves the problem. But we do want to solve the problem. We are sticklers for that part. Now, I've been asked to point out in the statement lobby group Video Games Europe made on us, they said they're looking forward to discuss their position with policymakers, which they no doubt have, and those who have led the European Citizens Initiative in the coming months. Well, that was 7 months ago, and we still have not heard one word from them. They're welcome to contact us, and in fact, the movement is preparing meetings in the future to make it even easier. They're invited for public discussions. Anyway, that's the news for the EU. Elsewhere, I didn't really cover it at the time, but our government petition in the UK did get brought before Parliament, and it was declined. But that wasn't a huge surprise. The UK was always more of a long shot. It simply doesn't have the same consumer protection laws that the EU does. That said, there actually may be another angle to get protections in the UK later on that I'm not at liberty to talk about yet.
Okay. I mean, so far, like, Ross's credibility is pretty good, so like I said, I trust him on this part. Like, he's very smart. I will say, I wouldn't surprised if Ross has, like, a little... He might be autistic. I'm not trying to be, like, rude or anything, but, like, the way he, like, talks and the way he communicates, like, he might be a little bit, which is fine, by the way. I think autistic people are very smart. And, yeah, case in point, like, Ross is very, very intelligent with this entire thing, and so I trust him. I think he has, like, a lot of credibility with this, so I have faith whatever angle he might take with the UK to possibly get some whatever restrictions are needed on this, I'd be all for.
But that one's really iffy, even more of a long shot. So don't count on that.
Ah, fuck! He blue-balled us. He edged us, and then he fucking blue-balled us. But not by ejaculating, by fucking ripping off our nutsack with that one. That's sad.
For our intents and purposes, the UK is probably cooked. Probably. Outside of Europe, in 2024, we submitted complaints to the ACCC on the crew in Australia. And a law firm stated that it had been escalated internally there, and they are still making their decision. Like Germany and France. So there's just more waiting to do there. And ironically, it blows my mind that the USA is currently in the lead for things happening first on this issue. But I still have a lot of skepticism on how that turns out. The takeaway from all this is while I hope we have a favorable answer from the Commission and can really start solving the problem, don't be discouraged if there's nothing to celebrate from the meeting. We're working around it just in case. We are coming at this issue so hard. When you consider the NGOs, the consumer agencies, possible court action, the initiative, working with Parliament, legal studies, hell, even the US bills. But most of all, EU law is already on our side on this. We're gonna find a way to make this work. Your guess is as good as mine which one, and there's actually even a couple more things going on I can't talk about yet. That could be a path to victory also. Now, as much as I don't like how this campaign keeps derailing my life, I'm really happy we're getting lots of competent help now that can...
Oh, man. I hope that Ross is able to at least live some of his life. But, again, it really goes to show that, like, Ross has put a lot of effort into this campaign. And, like, basically it's his personal baby. Hopefully he can get his life back eventually.
This over entirely at some point. At the beginning of the campaign, I said this is all an amateur effort. That's becoming less and less true now. We're getting more and more of the help we need. All right, that's it. We'll see how things go with the Commission.
All right, that was a cool update. I always love seeing Ross, and I always love watching and hearing him talk, so I know I maybe didn't give as much commentary as I would in some of my normal reactions, but... You know, that was it's always a fun segment.